You know, what does the Bible mean when it refers to God as the God of generations? Well, practically, I think it means that God doesn't view time and space in just one small segment. He views it as a whole. He views it from the beginning to the end. He doesn't have, he isn't narrow in his understanding of things, but all things are being worked out according to his will. Now that has a practical application to us. I mean, the Bible tells us that God is the God of generations, and as we need to view ourselves as part of that saving plan of God. Now, some of us are first-generation Christians. Some of us may be second-generation Christians or third or fourth-generation Christians. But wherever we are in God's plan, particularly if we're first-generation Christians, then we have come into our Christianity, into our relationship with the Lord, into covenant with Him with generational sins. For generations, sin has been building up and handed down, and then God has intervened. He's interrupted our lives with grace. And what does this mean for a family? Well, I think for husband and wives, Christian husbands and Christian wives, that we need to be serious about making sure we address those generational sins in our lives as individuals, and as a couple, so that we don't hand those sins down to our children. We don't want our children struggling with the same things that we struggle with. We don't want our children struggling with sins that could have been addressed and dealt with in our lives. And if we as parents could have done something about that, being diligent and faithful to work out our salvation, being faithful in working through our sanctification, seeing those sins put to death in our lives so that our children, the next generation, would have a better opportunity to serve the Lord, have a better opportunity to grow in grace and to do greater and better things. You know, whether it's sanctification, whether it's talents. You know, think about being skilled and developing talents over a generation, over several generations, how that honors and glorifies the Lord. Think about wealth, for example. You know, we may be poor, and by the end of our lives, we're only able to hand down, you know, a small inheritance to our children, but we have raised our children to be faithful. We've raised them to be, because they're faithful, they're industrious, they're creative, they're diligent, they're self-disciplined. I mean, they're Christians. And they take that wealth and they grow it with their wealth, and then they hand down a greater wealth to your grandchildren. Beloved, you see God's blessings being worked out over generations. And we should not be so selfish and self-centered and self-consumed that we just live in the moment. Now, we need to view ourselves generationally. We need to view our salvation generationally. And we need to view God's blessings and God's graciousness over generations. And I would encourage you that I would encourage you with this: if you'll have a generational view of your life, your family, of their future, it will change the way you live. And I hope you will consider being a generationally minded Christian.